I was here at the symposium in 2013 when I heard interesting stories from Horsi Herreshoff, and also interesting stories about 5.5 meters that made a large impact on me. So when I got invited to talk at this symposium, I first said no, because I didn't quite feel that I was up to it. But then I got some very good advice from some friends, so I accepted, which I'm glad I did. And I'm also very glad to see some of my Swedish ex-colleagues sitting here, and friends, and also in the back, which also is very nice to see that I have some local support. And also, you were talking about sustainability, about earlier, as Jon talked about the Reliance, which was scrapped right after she competed in the America's Cup 1903 against Shamrock 3. And I would like to point out that Shamrock 3 lived until the 1940s, where she was scrapped at Kockums boatyard in Malmö in Sweden for the lead keels. She spent last 20 years as a coaster freighter in the southern Baltic. That's also impressive for a 1903 America's Cup yacht, I would say. And also, Jon was talking about the Esther and how she was winning everything that she started, and we've been actually trying to find her main competitor, the Cakewalk, which actually beat the Esther quite a few times, and we have yet to find her, but she's sunken outside of Stockholm. We're looking. One day we will find her, and then we will rebuild her, and then we will beat the Esther. But as Esko pointed out, I'm a dreamer, and one picture says more than 1,000 words. This is the Princess Svanevit on the day of her launching, on the 23rd of June, 1930. Of course, she's late in the water, because the next day the owner will come and get her to his modest summer house in the Stockholm archipelago. So they're quite busy trying to get the boat in order. You can see the mast is lying there on the dock. There are 4 men standing under the crane. Just 2 months prior to this, the boatyard owner, Mr. Carl Plym, drowned. So it's his younger brother, Bengt Plym, had to finish the boat with his even younger brother, Gustaf Plym. They're both standing there together with boat designer Stig Tideman and boat builder and rigger Gustaf Andersson, scratching their heads and thinking what to do next. They put the mast on, got the main and the jib on, and then brought the boat out for test sail. And Mr. Stig Tideman told me, because I knew in the 90s, he said that him and Gustaf Plym were down in the bilges brushing up the dust, which of course means that she did not even leak a small glass of water. Then they brought the boat back into the dock and had her measured, the final measurements for her certificate. But why am I a dreamer? Why was I interested in this 12 meter? Well, my father had a 12 meter in the 60s. He had a mill-designed 12 meter from 1909, the Yacht, or as she was known in Sweden, Bedouin 2. Unfortunately, she was destroyed in a yard fire in 1964, on 9th of March in Stockholm, where my father and his friends, they'd been working for 2 years restoring the boat. And then they were welding the steel frames together with the mast foot and the shroud plates, and unfortunately at night the boat burnt completely out. Boat very next to her was the 10 meter Kitty, which I know people in Finland know, the Olympics gold medal winner from 1912. There's a famous picture where the firefighter is standing on the bow of Kitty with the hose pouring down water into Bedouin 2. The very next morning, nothing could be saved. The boat was just a burnt out hulk, so they had to bring out the chainsaws, cut her up in pieces, bring her out onto the ice, and set the fire starting again. And my grandfather said it was the only time he has ever seen my father cry. So it was very emotional. So I've heard this story all my life about this 12 meter that my father owned that was destroyed by fire, and the small bits and pieces he has always carried with him, the salon table and some small pieces of floors and things and some fittings. So I've heard the story and heard the story and heard, and my father, he instantly bought a 10 meter instead, so I grew up on a 10 meter, that's why meter boats are so fascinating. But in the mid-70s, there was a Swedish challenge for the America's Cup with a 12 meter Sverige with Pelle Pettersson. And I noticed, as a very curious child, I was about 10, 11 years old, and that in the mainsail of the Sverige it says 12 S-3. And I knew that my father's 12 meter was the 12 S-1. So, who was 12 S-2? Then my father, he could tell me the story about the Princess Svanevit, the most beautiful yacht ever built in Sweden. Not the biggest yacht, not the fastest yacht, but the most beautiful yacht ever built in Sweden. How she sailed to the Med in the late 50s and has not been heard of since then. And this was back in the 70s, and of course, prior to internet, and there was no way to find out where the boat had become of her. She was just gone. Nobody knew about her. Well, everybody knew that she sailed to the Med in the 50s. So, well, here's another picture from 1930, the first regatta outside of Sandland, the Royal Swedish Yacht Club's 100th Centennial Regatta, with the original owner behind the helm. And I think even Tore Holm is aboard sailing the boat at the time. You know, you have to be curious, what happened to the boat? What happened to her? I always had it in the back of my head, you know, especially with the America's Cup, 12 meters and everything, and I also was a skipper of the South Australia for a couple of years in the 90s, so it's always been the 12 meters and 12 meters and 12 meters. And then I think it was when they restored Vim the first time, there was an article in Yachting World, and they had a list with all the 12 meters left in the world, and there was not the Princess Svanevit, but the Barranquilla, as she was known in England at the time. Just said that she was in the handle, and then a very rich man owned her and rarely used. And I was quite satisfied with that, you know. But then at least I knew she still existed and it was pretty good condition. So then in the something like 2000, 2003, I started looking even deeper. Where could this boat be? And then, well, if she was in the handle and she was owned by the 150th richest man in England, who was known for his privacy, how can I even contact him? Just a poor boat builder. But in 2008, I wrote him a letter, explained who I was, and that the boat that he owned was a very famous Swedish boat, and it would be really nice to see her sailing again. Should he choose to restore her or sell her, please think of me. And I got the letter back, handmade paper with water stamp on it. So I knew I was out of class right there and then. And it said, "Thank you for your recent, charming and undated letter." So I knew he was into details. But then I had him on the hooks. So me and my colleague at the time, we started writing more letters, and after 2 years we were allowed to come and see the boat. And then everything proceeded from there and then. But here is another picture. There are so rare pictures of the boat actually sailing. Here's a picture outside of Malmö where she's sailing with her second owner. He used her as a day boat. I mean, just the way you pretty much use the 12 meters today. Take the next pictures as well. Here's the third owner having the boat sailing in the Stockholm archipelago. The third owner actually bought the boat for one purpose, that was to sail to the Med. He was into buying land in Spain for developing. So he used the boat to sail around the Spanish coast. And where he saw places that he liked, he stopped went ashore, asked who owned the land, and then they bought it. And then started developing. It was around Torrevieja and places like that. So he was kind of a pioneer in that business. Then he had the boat in Palma, in Mallorca in 1958, and then this Englishman, the 150th richest man in England, came and saw the boat. And there's two stories why he bought the boat. And one story is that it was the highest mast in the bay that day, which that might have been true. But when I asked him, he said it was the most beautiful yacht I had ever seen. And then you know that he bought it with his heart. And he brought the boat back to England, and he had some jobs done on the boat, and well, he rarely used it. And it's been in the Solent from 1959 and on. So I thought, well, if there's a 12 meter sailing in the Solent, then Beacon of Cows, they're bound to have pictures of it. The most recent picture is from 1963, so rarely used. It's probably a really good word for it. Then the third owner, Mr. Gable, he sold the boat, and then a couple of years later, he brought another boat down to the Med. He bought the Figaro 6, an Anker design 12 meter, here with the yawl configuration, and he sailed that one as well down to the Med and continued doing property business. And then he sold it to a famous Spanish actor, and then it was lost outside of Portugal in 1967, unfortunately. It says S-12, but that doesn't mean it's the 12th Swedish 12 meter. It means that the N from Norwegian registration is just replaced with an S. Continue. Well, so when me and my colleague first, in 2010, came to Handbell Yacht Service, where the boat had been since 1959, and we climbed ashore, and I opened the canvas covers and I looked in. This boat has been on land for 9 years now, when this picture was taken, and it was like opening the holy grail of Swedish yachting. I saw these clean decks, and it's actually a teak deck laid upon the original Oregon pine deck. Yes, you can see there's no king plank in the middle. That means all the planks in the deck are tapered, which is typical for the Plym way of laying decks. Very complicated, time-consuming, but very beautiful. Makes the boat look a bit more narrow. And one thing that has been also the myth of the Princess Svanevit has been the very, very exclusive interior, which is made up of the same bulkheads as you had in Wings, with the small stripes and veneer, but also with inlaid marquetry woodwork, and not just a picture of the boat, but here you can see the aft salon, or as it was called on the drawings, the cozy corner. It's actually called the cozy corner, and it's Gustaf Estlander's words. First, there's a picture in the dark, which is the Santa Maria, and then there's a bend with a Greek god, and then the first owner's first three boats, the 95 square meter Brit Marie, the 55 square meter Maritana, and then the 6 meter Bisbee, which went on to win the Olympic gold in 1932. Next. And here is a detail from the main cabin. This is Landsort's lighthouse. And it's about this big, so it's very detailed. Continue. Well, things proceeded, and he was not very keen on selling the boat at all, actually. He wanted to keep the boat. He is actually known for the man who has never sold anything in his life at all. But 2 years prior to us getting this boat, he sold his motorboat, as he called this, was a 63 meter, I think it's a sister ship to the Royal Ship Norway, a boat called the Shamara, which he owned. And then we knew that maybe there is a way we can get the boat. But unfortunately he died. So, what to do? So we talked to the estate, and we got a lot of help from the the English owner's secretary and her husband, because they kind of figured out that the best thing for the boat was probably to get her back to Sweden and let us restore her. So at the end, in 2016, I was approached by the secretary and her husband, and they said, well, there's a possibility that maybe in the future you might be able to get the boat. You'll have to let the estate do its work, and then you'll maybe get an offer. It's going to be expensive, and there's no one else getting the chance to buy the boat. And if you don't buy the boat will be destroyed. Wow. Did I have any euros in my pockets? No. But I managed to get an interested party. Actually, the owner of the Sparkman Stevens yacht Tomahawk from 1939, he was very keen on the boat because his wife's father was a very good friend of the English owner. The wife's father was actually Don Shedd, the father of powerboat racing, I should say. So she's been sailing on the boat in the 70s, so they gladly went into the boat. But and I should point out, we need more investors. So look into your pockets for more euros. But this is the way that the boat looked when it came to Stockholm. And it had not been sailing since 2003. And, well, I think you can take the last pictures. There's me finally at the goal, the finish line. The boat is in Stockholm, preparing to be pulled into the workshop and the work starting. And it's been an amazing project so far. And my colleague sitting here with Adam, he's actually the one leading the work right now. And there's not much left from what you saw in the last picture. Some hull planking, but we're looking forward to have the boat sailing in 2020 for the pre-worlds in Sandhamn. There's a good chance of it. But like I said, more investors. And I should point out, it's an Estlander design boat, should apply to a lot of things, I should say. And the boat's name, Princess Svanevit, it's actually an opera by August Strindberg, but the music is made by John Sibelius.
Okay, then
and also
the exit, then it's clear.
And also, the opera's first appearance was at the Svenska Teatern here in Helsinki, 1901. So,
No problem.
So there you have it. Lots of Finnish history in Princess Svanevit. Well, that is it for me. You will questions, anybody?
We'll have the questions later. Thank you so much.